So going out there, seeing the world how it really is, but be careful what you bring back as insights, because no one loves what you will say. It's just coming up, it is evolving like an organism. I want to let it grow. And maybe after, as you said, 30, 40, 50 videos, suddenly themes pop up, connections pop up that I might have not seen. So I really want to let the field grow by itself, because that's the only place where I can do it without running into troubles. Society is mirrored as specialists and generalists, because as I posted today on LinkedIn as well, we as modern polymaths can't do our work when there would not be specialists around who dive deeper and deeper and deeper into a field.
Welcome to the Polymath podcast, highlighting your multidisciplinary life, showcasing that it's okay to do many different things. Hello, I'm Dustin PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Florian Odilo Stummer, the CEO of the one Leonardo per company, experienced scientist and academic, while advancing and exploring his transdisciplinary fields of expertise. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath podcast.
Hi there, Dustin. So lovely to have me.
I like that. And then on top of that too, you are co-hosting a show called The Multipod, right? And so that's also kind of a similar experience to the Polycast.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I hadn't that much time lately, but for the for the Puttyverse and the multi-potentialites there, it was always a great thing to bring in new ideas and especially listen to their stories. That's the most fantastic thing, actually.
And I always find that finding the word that you anchor to most is really important. And while like me and Angela, we would always try to go for the polymathy word, I find that like whatever works for you is best, and then try to improve from there, kind of thing.
Yes. You mean actually how I define a polymath?
No, not necessarily that. It's just more about the word. We'll get to that question probably later, or actually, I guess we could answer it now. But my point was having multi-potentialite, polymath, generalist, jack of all trades, whichever term you prefer, whatever feels right to you to describe yourself, kind of thing. That's what I was going for.
Well, to be honest, I myself right now, because I set in place with Angela the field of modern polymathy, I would go with the modern polymath, because as I understood lately, the classical polymath from the Renaissance, and I mean that's for 450, 500 years ago, there were no specialization around, so there were a lot of fields where they can dive into because no one knew what's coming up. And then after the Industrial Revolution, the silos were built, and the modern polymath is more of a connector between these silos. So the new fields, the interland, which is kind of the field between the silos. There is where our potential lies. So the modern polymath is a good thing.
I agree, and I think that finding that, I guess why I came up with my name, PolyInnovator, because I wanted to make a word that was more modern. So I totally understand that philosophy there, Florian. I think that a lot of creators in this space have had that issue where, like, do we want to be kind of known for the polymath Renaissance person, or do we want to have a more modernized version of it?
Yeah, it's tricky in so far, because when you look at the polymathic term from the Renaissance point of view, it was very male dominated. So it excludes actually women a lot, and we are in the 21st century, and I think that's not the way to go. And when you say polymath, you actually have a lot of male heroes and male role models in that.
I try to incorporate more women on the show, but also with the polymathic term, like Ada Lovelace, for example, is a great person who's female, but also polymath. And so I try to make it more just for everybody, but it's just one of those things where I understand that people do associate that as a more masculine thing. Getting to one of the first questions here, what was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
That's a good question, because actually 5 years ago it was pre-pandemic, and everything seems pretty fine, and everything seems to be somehow manageable, plannable.
Yeah.
But since the 5 years, I must admit, how can I put it? The pandemic did something to us, not only in the sense that it was one of the most cruel social experiments that ever ran over the planet. I think the most problematic thing was that we understood that the world is much more complex than we thought in the first place. It was like a canvas, and the color was ripped off the canvas, and everyone was able to look inside and see how the gears work, and that not everything that we heard is like so easy and okay. So my mindset 5 years ago was more like, yes, polymathy, good thing, modern polymathy, good thing, I love to live my life like it is. But after these 5 years, now it becomes more of, as the world becomes a more and more complex place and complicated place, it feels like an obligation now to come forward and bring and ground the whole topic more in academia and check for case studies and how it can be used, stuff like that, So I'm more into bring it to practice, bring it into life.
I agree, but the whole bringing it to practice thing, I do find it interesting. Angela talks about this too, the whole bringing it into academia and finding the more concrete examples. I try to make it more democratized, where it's not as necessarily as defined, and try to make it to where like people who might not realize they're polymaths are so, but they might not have ever gone to college still too. So it's just interesting that the dynamic there. It's like they're not opposite per se, but it is interesting to think about.
No. I even think that I lately came up with an idea, because so much of the polymathic traits are grounded in ADHD. Of course, we still don't know. You see, I mean, it's absurd that after 500 years, there is really no research in this field. Like, mankind forgot that such people exist. As a matter of fact, there are so many bits and pieces that somehow are connected to neurodiversity, the spectrum, as many say, ADHD. But as we evolve through our lifetimes and we have more and more input, more experience, it somehow feels that ADHD, you are like diagnosed until you're 20-ish something. Then there is this 20 to 30 where everything is possible, multi-potentialite. You have a lot of potential to do multiple things. Many are in the study times, do studies or on the beginning of the career. When you're 30 to 40, there is a shift because family planning is somehow on the way, where to live, where to go next. Everything has to be more plannable. And then you become a bit more generalistic because you see fields clearer from your life experience. And as a matter of fact, I mean, even Leonardo da Vinci drew his most famous Mona Lisa when he was 47. So I think it needs a certain time that you become a polymath or a modern polymath. And right now, I even think that even a certain form of specialists can reach this point of polymathy, even if it is just a form of, specialized generalism or generalized specialism whatsoever. But bringing in more, seeing their own field, their own specialized niche broader, can make them some kind of upside down, downside up,
hybrid in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is where I see T-shaped person really fitted into place too. And Florian, I'm not sure if you checked out the chart I sent you in the email, but the multidisciplinary spectrum, something I came up with to incorporate all these terms together. And one of the pathways on there is like the specialist and the dual specialist and the tri-specialist. I separate the tri-specialist from polymath because there is that curiosity and that wide range that the polymaths employ, but I think that the tri-specialist still kind of has that potential to go into that. And so I wanted to at least have that on the chart so people can see it. But it's interesting you brought up neurodivergence. I find that there's an interesting dynamic when it comes to early birds and night owls. Like a lot of our society is kind of built for early birds, like, hey, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever. Whereas I'm a night owl, I like to stay up late. I was up late last night doing more and more polymathy stuff, right? But the research has shown that like we needed people at night to keep the tribes safe from predators and stuff like that. So we needed the people there. I almost wonder if there was an alternative to that too, like when it comes to the neurodivergent people. Like, yes, we had the people who are neurotypical because we needed people to feed the cogs in the wheel or something like that. But we had the people who were more neurodivergent to be the innovators or the entrepreneurs, that kind of thing, to see the picture in a different way.
Yeah. So there is definitely a connection between this tribal thinking. There is even this hunter-gatherer, hunter-farmer theory hypothesis, which says that there is a certain genetic predisposition for some people who are more in the field of hunters. And it's something I don't know. It's a qualitative. There are so many qualitative aspects as well. But it is true that there are certain genetic traits or genetic points that you fit more into this tribe of hunter. And the other thing, you feel yourself if it is like right or not. For instance, I always felt better in a small tribe or friends about 7 to 8 people, which is kind of funny because that's exactly the the amount of people that you needed back then to survive. And the other thing is there is the explorer gene, the explorer gene that keeps your serotonin and dopamine level high. After all, I mean, before 19th century, ADHD didn't even exist. So there are a lot of points, and I even read one paper about T and what was the other one? T and C genetic pool, and that farmers with I think it is the C genetic pool, which is more prominent in farmers. They are able to do better with working through carbohydrates. They are doing better with sugar, while those with a T, which is more back to the hunters, nearly all of them have problems with diabetes or adipositas. So these are all things that point in a certain direction that there might be a genetic clue as well.
And especially when it comes even to polymathy versus like specialism too. You are a prolific scientist from what I can tell. How has science impacted your life?
Well, it's actually the thing that propels me forward every day. It's a big motivator, and even more since I became a father, because I became a father very late in life with 40. My daughter is 7 years now, and I see her thriving now, and I see her how she sees the world, and it is a very polymathic point of view, because everything is possible. And for her, as she has no limitations and borders or blinders, she is more like everything is connected, because from her worldview, there is no other way that she can't understand that something can't be connected. That's the interesting point. So my question is now, with 47 heading to 50, I have more this qualitative stuff now in mind. What does it do with us? What does the science as such do with us when specialists come back with super duper whatsoever's mega new insights? This is nice, this is cool. I mean, see ChatGPT. Right now everyone thinks it's the savior of the world. Why does it show up? Why was it published exactly after the pandemic ended? I mean, was there a reason? And this is exactly the point where my connecting stuff begins, where I see dots and bits and pieces and are they fitting? No, are they fitting? Does it feel right? And when it feels right, then I start to dive deeper and look for the science and the proof behind it.
That's why I asked that question, because I had a feeling you would answer it in a unique way, which you did. And one thing I found on this show, more so than I thought I would, is that a lot of parents come onto the show. I mean, pretty much everybody to a certain degree becomes a parent at some point in their life, and I don't think 40 is that late, really, for the most part. I've seen, stories people having kids at 60. Obviously, it's different if you're a man or a woman, but the thing is, like, 40 is still pretty young in the grand scheme of things, and 47 still plenty of time, not even halfway through the life kind of thing. And science being a major factor of your motivation and pursuing your forward momentum, I think that's very interesting. I'm curious to think about like what other people's forward momentum comes from that question even.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I think the most interesting things were always like this, finding out what's behind the next corner. What's next out there? I know this, I know that, but what's next? And that this somehow resonates to the explorer gene experience, where you you go out and find something new, and even if it is a small piece of something, and then you suddenly start to think about it. How it is for other people, science. Well, I think we had a major problem in the pandemic because science was so cruelly
untrusted or whatever,
and misunderstood and kicked with the boots. But actually, science, it's the perfect field where society is mirrored as specialists and generalists. Because, as I posted today on LinkedIn as well, we as modern polymaths can't do our work when there would not be specialists around who dive deeper and deeper and deeper into a field. For instance, I don't know if you read or heard of this young guy who now finally made it after 35 years to see the rebirth in Tetris.
I haven't heard.
He made it happen. He played Tetris until the final level, and it was the first one since 35 years when it was actually published to see the rebirth, so that the game starts again. No one has seen this before. Now, this guy used, I don't know, hundreds of hours to learn certain techniques and skills to find a pure specialist. Yeah. It's fascinating what he found out, and we don't know. Maybe sometime it's useful in the future. But it's good to know that some specialist found something like this, because when I have an issue then somewhere, then, oh, right, maybe I have to dive deeper what this guy was actually doing. And maybe I can fit this to another field that I'm actually working on right now. Yeah, so...
Just bringing up video games too, it's interesting to think about how video games can help you apply that same mentality. I remember a story about a kid showing his grandpa one of the Assassin's Creed games, and it takes place in Italy. And the grandpa, was quite up there in age, so didn't really have any curiosity towards the violent aspects of the game. He just wanted to explore the city. And so he gets into a canoe and starts going down Venice in the canoe from like 500 years ago, where the story takes place, and just was enjoying the scenery and experiencing Venice for the first time because he hadn't gone in person. And it was interesting to think about how video games can be that simulation for different areas of the world, or ancient Egypt, for example, another Assassin's Creed game, but also the builder of skills. So like the Tetris game, I've played Tetris quite a bit myself, especially back in the day, maybe not nearly to the point where this guy did, but the point was I was trying to learn how to do it. I felt like it was good neural stimuli. That's why I was doing it. As much as I like Tetris, I was doing it to stimulate my brain. And I remember at one point I got into the state of flow really deeply because I was in a fast-paced, like high-level stakes kind of game. And it was an interesting challenge.
I completely understand that. I have 2 or 3 games where I myself dive into and don't find out of the worlds anymore, but they trigger so much ideas. And then I have a notebook next to me and write down the ideas. Or with my daughter, cooperation games. When it's rainy out there and we can't go out in nature, we are playing cooperation games to train this a bit. Yeah, now you do this, now do that. So damning all computer game. I don't know. It's a reflection. It's a mirror of how we play, and we can learn by that. Absolutely, yes, for sure.
One more thing before we move on too is how it affects the brain in an interesting way. Like obviously hand-eye coordination is one thing, but the spatial understanding. I have always had a pretty good mentality of 3D environments kind of thing. I could always remember where to go and I know which direction is which kind of thing. But playing video games, I think, has directly impacted that skill.
Yes.
I went to Houston just a couple years ago, probably 3 years ago at this point, and I still have this Google Maps 3D image in my head of the area that I stayed in because I explored a whole bunch of that area. And it's interesting to think about that memory of being able to do that. It came from video games.
Yes. And it's fantastic that you mentioned that, because I had always this ability to see stuff in cutaway diagrams, explosive diagrams I don't know where it was from. I was playing Lego since I can remember, so maybe because I learned the plans and they are some kind of cutaway. But everything I see, every problem, process, structure is always 3-dimensional, like cutaways. And I see the bits and pieces. And when you do this with a couple of things, then you suddenly see the interconnections. And that's fascinating.
Do you know about Obsidian, the tool?
No. But now you triggered something. Thank you.
Well, so yes, because you're going to have a fun field day with this. I'm going to let it load for a second while we talk about this. I talk about knowledge management for polymaths. That's really kind of what my niche is. So organizing all your information and notes and data in a tool like this to help you visualize it. So this is just a graph view. It's not that important for the most part, but it's great for situations like this where I get to show you. Every one of these green dots is a tag or a folder. Normally, it's just tags, but I have a special plugin that also does the folders because I organize my data through folders. Some people just do it through tags. And so every white dot is one of my notes, whether it is a journal or a piece of content I've created or an article I've saved. So I also save every blog post I want to read to here too, because I've been in plenty of situations where the blog post or website would go down and I lost access to it. But it's interesting how deeply this goes. And I think that if I can maybe change the strength, because
is just you. These are just your records and your
mine.
stuff. Good Lord. Imagine that in a company for departments.
I know. Yeah.
So where you can see the intersections, that would, oh my goodness.
And so it's one of those things where tools like this, I think, are important for specialists. You can use, a lot of programmers and stuff like that use these Jupyter notebooks, for example. That's helpful for organizing their data. A lot of PhD people use special tools for it. But I think that in general, people who are specialists or generalists need to have some sort of organizational structure. Da Vinci had his notebooks. And there's a lot of tools like Notion, but Obsidian seems to be the best, in my opinion, when it comes to, for polymathic people, especially organizing your multiple endeavors.
Fantastic. I have to check that. Thanks for that.
Yeah. let's get to the next question here because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. But what was your motivation to start the Modern Polymath channel? Because you were mentioning content earlier.
Yes, that's funny, because actually there were so many fantastic voices out there on Polymathy already. And I kind of was, a couple of them convinced me, maybe you should do your own thing and bring your own perspective to the field, to make the picture richer. And this is actually where I started it. And yeah, pretty much that was it.
I think that you still have a long way to go to when it comes to like what you want to share with the world, obviously, because you probably have so many ideas you want to create content around. That's what I'm gathering. We've already started pretty strong, and it's interesting to think about what you just said there. Me and Angela, I think, are the two biggest creators when it comes to polymathy, because we just have hundreds of videos at this point, and each. But there's still other people, and people who are authors like David Epstein's Range and stuff like that. There's the Putty Tribe. There's the Octopus Movement. There is Cast of All Trades, which is a Jack of All Trades podcast. There's a few different things out there, and I've definitely noticed a few different like pods, especially so Angela's Facebook group, Polymath's Place, or my Discord channel. But there's also a subreddit called Modern Polymath, and that has been kind of growing a little bit, which is really cool. So if you haven't experienced that at all, you should go in there and say hi. But I definitely think, and I talked to Angela about this, there should be more people. There's not enough people creating content around this subject, and it's a needed field, I think, definitely.
Yeah. That's it. Actually, why I started it, because I had, 1,001 ideas. But I started it because it was just, I wanted to start with something. And actually, I don't have any plan right now. It is just what comes to my mind. I love this idea right now with taking 1, 2, or 3 academic papers which are contradicting, then find the connections, find the contradictions, then sum it up, and then let it and give it to Notebook LM, so that it is AI-generated podcast. But there is a deeper reason. There will be a twist in the future, because I will produce a couple of them, and then I will contact the researchers and invite them to a talk. And we listen to this AI-produced sum up and interpretation. And then I want to know from the person, from the researcher, is this really true? Is this the core of what you found? So it's a bit, bring the whole thing absurdum because they will, of course, say, oh my goodness, they forgot that and this and that. And I worked on that for 3 years, and they just sum it up in 7 minutes, and half of it is missing, and there is no qualitative aspect. So it's kind of tricking it is possible to do it, but I want to hear the voice, the human behind it, who says, yes, it's okay and good enough, or no, there are so many levels missing, and if so, which levels are missing and why? So this is right what I'm interested in, and that's what I start with. And potentially in a year, I'm bored out and do something else with it.
So I definitely think there's also another more positive aspect to it too. What if they come up with something that the researchers did not even think of, and so the LM models come up with something that's like, hey, this is an angle I didn't think about when I did this paper. This is really cool. Now I get to go pursue that. And as a content creator, I definitely have an experience of not being consistent, and that's one of the biggest things that helps to growth is being consistent. And I think that when it comes to people who are polymathic or even neurodivergent, there is this follow the flow or follow the dopamine mentality where like, hey, if I'm interested in it or if I have these ideas, then I'll do it now. But if you do it all at once, then you're not going to necessarily have that platform growth. And so what I try to tell people is like, hey, if you have the ideas, that's great, write them down in Obsidian or Notion and then schedule them out ahead of time. And that's kind of the solution for people who are more like bursts kind of people, right? You have these ideas in bursts.
This is good, and this is brilliant. For me personally right now, with my academic background, I always have to plan ahead. I always have to think about funding money and stuff like that. And this channel is kind of experiment. It's just coming up. It is evolving like an organism. I want to let it grow. And maybe after, as you said, 30, 40, 50 videos, suddenly themes pop up, connections pop up that I might have not seen. So I really want to let the field grow by itself, because that's the only place where I can do it without running into troubles.
I definitely get that. I think that there's a really dynamic when it comes to being in academia, but also being a content creator. The same like being in a corporate world. If you're working in a corporate world, you have to be careful what you say online, that kind of thing.
Yes,
In
yes,
academia, you don't
yes,
have to be as careful per se, but it is different too.
yes, yes. That's true. That's true. Even I play around now with a couple of ideas for novellas. It was like it was lately. A friend told me, "Oh, you should write. You should hope," because I had a short career, but funny career as a novelist 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So when did you go back to writing novels? And I said, well, now as I understand that about Polymath, I can't go back to novels. They are far too long. I can't sit there for half a year. But a novella would be nice. That's just 120 pages. I can do that. And it's mostly
Yeah.
about the idea. So I have a couple of ideas now running around, and I will start with this later this year when winter starts. Yeah, but as you say, going back to content creation, I have to filter this all through myself and the fields on. If there is something that can't be proved, I mean, see novels, novellas, whatsoever, fiction itself. It is actually qualitative research. People are telling stories. They are doing things. They interchange in a story, and our brains are wired for story. That's why we memorize things with stories.
And also following that mindset and creativity, that's one reason why I use like tools like Obsidian, because I have these ideas and I may not have the full-fledged idea. I just have the title. Like, here's the title, here's a unique idea. I want to
Yes,
create content around it, but I don't know what to do yet. I put it down on the list, put it on the back burner, and then at some point my brain will come up with new information, or maybe I thought about that idea for a long time. Either way, I go back to it, then I finally go ahead and make content around it, but I have it listed there so I don't forget it.
yeah, yeah. Understandable.
Something I ask all my guests, and we kind of touched on this many times today already, is what is a polymath to you?
What is a polymath to me? That's a very good question. A polymath to me is actually a person that intrinsically is motivated to learn, to add ideas to his and her world, and mostly to find out about him or herself, what is going on around me and with me in this around me. It sounds a bit philosophical, but actually it is like a polymath is a complete human being that denied to be pushed in a box and sit there for the rest of their lives. Maybe the multi-potentialite or a generalist or in the beginning is someone who sits in the card box, has to be shoved in, but has the finger sharp enough to poke the first holes into the card box walls to see out there. So kind of a Platonian. So going out there, seeing the world how it really is, but be careful what you bring back as insights, because no one loves what you will say.
Yeah. That's a good point to make, especially the deeper you go, too, you'll end up coming up with these different synergies between areas, and people sometimes don't want to hear those, even if they are true.
Yes. And it is actually true. I mean, when I'm around, when imposter syndrome hits, especially in the moment when you think about, okay, I'm talking to someone, and this guy or this woman is some kind, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you see it in their eyes when you start telling too much about you, they simply don't believe it anymore. And this is kind of a pity, because there were times when you were a child and everyone believed you that you can do it and believed in you that you can do everything. But when you grow up, the system says, no, you can't do it anymore. Why is that? It makes absolutely no sense. And this paradox on you walk through your lives, and then finally come up with, okay, they are this kind of people I tell this part of my life. They are the other kind of people where I show that part of life, but never the whole picture. And this is cruel. That's dehumanizing.
I definitely agree, and it's something I've talked about with people on this show. And one lesson I've learned is like it's not so much isolated these parts. It's more like here's a marketing funnel for each one. So my brain always goes to the business aspect, and like I have to market to that part of my life. I have to market to that part of my life, and so I definitely get the whole dehumanizing part of things. But I also realize that their brains are so used to the box that's just how they work. And so I feel like it's more empathy. Like you don't overwhelm them per se, rather than it's dehumanizing yourself. But both angles are true.
Absolutely. And that's a very basic thing when you talk about polymathy. It's not the this or that. It's this and that. And there are no buts around. I mean, I simply never hear a but from a polymath, except to add a new information, but not to deny what you just said.
And I really like that because it's a commonly misunderstood thing where it's like, hey, I don't want to say what your thing say is wrong. In fact, I think there's only been 2 times on this show where I've disagreed with somebody per se. But even
Yes.
then, I still try to actively listen and take in what they're saying, even if I may not personally agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where does the polyployee come into play? How does that come into this dynamic? I love that
Oh,
too.
that's a funny thing because when I did my dissertation, because Angela Cotalessa is my supervisor, and she wrote the first.
Oh,
Yes,
I
she
forgot about
wrote
that.
the first PhD in the field, and I wrote the first Doctor of Business Administration in the field. And I knew I had to focus more on the how do polymaths in companies in their work life, and especially how do they cope with different forms of leadership. And I needed a good word for it. And one day suddenly the polyployee popped up as an employee, polymathic employee, the polyployee.
Yeah.
And this concept actually, it is like for people who sit in companies are forced to do just 2 or 3 tasks while they are in their private lives, the jack of all trades. And I simply can't understand why this is not used by companies, or better,
Take advantage of it.
it's I don't get it, because they are hiring 3 specialists for one job that actually a good trained polymath could do. I mean, that's saving money actually, and having an interconnector and idea pattern recognizer, idea synthesizer in one. And I have no idea, but we are working on that.
Entrepreneurship. Yeah. Another
Sure. Yeah.
angle too, Florian, is that like I've talked about this a little bit. My frustration as someone who's trying to get a job, all these recruiters, the way they do their descriptions for the jobs are generally not very well made for the most part, especially when it comes to
No, charming input.
yeah, I wanted to be careful with it. But the thing is, especially what really grinds my gears is when I see the digital marketing specialist job. And when you're a digital marketing specialist, that means you are good at one angle of digital marketing. But every single time I see digital marketing specialist on a job description, it always says SEO, social media, video creation, podcast creation, multiple formats of digital marketing. And what they really mean is a digital marketing generalist. And yet that one simple change, they just don't do.
Yeah. Now, one of the major problems, as you mentioned, is not only that these job descriptions are synthesized and produced more and more by AI. The problem is that the people who do that, the HRs, don't know that was simply that we exist, and they don't know how to fit us in. And the next thing is, a lot of these job descriptions are actually bin jobs. So everyone who has a part or a slice of his job he doesn't want to do anymore, puts it in the bin. And then you suddenly have a new job, which is actually the part of 5, 6 people what they don't want to do anymore. And this is the new job. Of course, you have no bloody idea who can do that. So you might end up with such a bin job as a polymath and say, okay, I can do that, no problem. But actually, it's all the crap that no one wants to do. And here comes responsibility. And then when we crash with the foot on the accelerator. And no one is interested in that. So the major problem right now is that the organizations, I think, and the hierarchies are built around very strict gears, and we just want to exchange the gear. That's it.
Yeah.
And this will be a major problem in the future. This will be a major problem in the future when retirement waves hit the planets in so many countries. There are fewer young people, and they have to. How will they produce results when there are no more people around? Okay, so I think the world has to go more in generalistic places and fields and niches even, because we see how the world looks after specialists ruined it after 100 years. So, yeah.
Something you said at the beginning of the show too is something about how like we need specialists to go into those narrow fields, the more hyper specialism, and now we're seeing more mixed areas like biotechnology, nanotechnology. These merged 2 different specialties into one, and it was more dual before, but now we're reaching this like digital renaissance where we really need people who are doing 3 different specialties to find the innovation, the newer innovations, because like you said, in the Renaissance period, there was so much new stuff that you could be pretty much anything for the most part, that Renaissance person, because everything was new. It wasn't super defined yet. over the last 100 years, things have gotten defined. That's why in the last 20 years, we're seeing more merged dual fields, almost kind of a continuation of what you just said a moment ago. Now we need to have even more generalist approach, like not 2, but 3, maybe even 4, to find the new innovations, combining those different areas.
Yes. This is true. Well, the question is how we can incorporate it or implement it in running processes and running structures around us. Mm-hmm. And the question is, does someone listen, and who listens? And if so, how can we get the best out of it, the advantage, the benefit for all in? I'm not anymore in win-win solutions. I want win-win-win solutions right now. Because win-win will end in a win-lose somewhere, or in a lose-lose, because there are always two who will battle and quell. But with a win-win-win, you have 3 parties, and then it becomes a bit more tricky to overrule the 2/3.
Something that reminds me of is this idea I have for this show. So I had the initial interview with you where we go into your 5 different areas of your life, and then I have the round 2 polycast where you come back and you might go into more areas that you didn't go to the first time, but more importantly, you get to show where your life has been since the last time you came on. So COVID was a big deal. I did all the interviews in 2020. That's when I started doing them, and then since then, people have adapted now to that new world that we're in now. And so seeing that change. But I had an idea for a 3rd series called The Triple Threat, where I bring 2 different people who might have 2 areas that overlap, but 2 areas that don't overlap.
Really?
And see how they kind of come together, have a more Delphi method in a way. And I think it's just really interesting how kind of what you said there makes me think of that.
Yes, do that. That will be highly interesting.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see your channel going towards too? Because I feel like you and I are 2 of the only modern polymath coaches in this world, and so I'm kind of curious to see what are you planning on doing for the most part.
Yeah, but it's a good question, because first of all, I need to hear the stories. I'm more into when I don't have the full story of a polymath or of the person. What's the background? What were the traumatic experiences in their lives? I have to find out that at first when it goes to coaching. And then this part of identification, of detection. Am I? This moment of, oh, good, I am. And then move forward in the system in this transformation phase. Because the moment it hits you that you are different and that it is okay to be different, and it might be polymathic, this is a major thing in your life, because there is a major break. And then you go to sleep, and the day after, what is the first thing you do? I mean, you see the world from a complete new perspective then. And the question is, what are you doing in this transformation phase? How can you cope with it in work and surrounding with your loved ones, friends, close ones, whatsoever? So helping in this transformation phase to what to do, in which and how much to do, and where not. This is actually the main thing I start with, because there are some who want to go out and tell it to everyone, but slow down, wait a bit, wait. First accept it for yourself, first understand what it does to you, does with you, and who would be capable to understand. And then mostly there are just 1 or 2 person around, or 1 or 2 people around you can talk to. Yeah, and then I have, the catch-ups. I don't tell anyone to do, because I can find out for someone else. But what I can say is, if you have the right feeling that there is a person you can talk to about it, start there, and then build up a close network where you can just be you. I mean, after all, it's such moments are actually the final level of what Nietzsche once said. The most difficult thing in your life is become yourself. And the moment you understand you became yourself this very moment. But what's next? And unfortunately, there are no stories. There are no narratives around that tell you what to do then. And I think that's a major issue I want to work with, and not an issue, but that's where I want to work with.
It's something you want to tackle.
Yeah.
There's a few different things we can go off of from there, but what really came to mind first was your coaching sounds like it also could be kind of a podcast in a way. Like maybe the initial session, if people are willing to do it, like you could offer 1 free coaching session, and it just the cost is like, hey, I have to record this, so it's my show, and then you get to use that as a funnel to your channel, but then it also gets people into your coaching program as well, because if they want to continue with you, then they already have that first experience, and then you have content.
Brilliant, Dustin. That's brilliant.
My brain is content focused. I've always been a
I
content
see
creator.
it. I'm
But
super grateful for that, my friend.
yes,
Oh my goodness, this is really helpful. Thank you.
it's a great way to build out your channel, 'cause especially since you already have the experience with the multipod. It's different though than with the multipod, and I figured this might be a great way for you to make content, but also get more people into your coaching program.
Yes, 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 and that's a good one. I like that. Super.
Perfect. And so you mentioned AI a couple times too, and I'm really curious to see how AI fits into polymathy. So I wanted to pick your brain on that while we still have some time.
How AI fits into polymathy. That's a very interesting thing because it is a brilliant tagline. How can I put it? You know Dune, the movie
Like the
Dune.
movie, yeah.
Yes. And there are these characters, these Mentad characters. The Mentad who is in the Dune universe, a highly skilled individual, trained in logic, computing, cognitive thinking. So there are no computers anymore around. This person does it, this individual. Now, I sometimes think about what if is polymathy or modern polymathy some kind of human LLM, you know? Some kind of, maybe we are probabilistic machines a bit ourselves, but with the bonus that we have innovation, that we have this inner energy and motivation to thrive, to proceed, to find out and stuff like that. Because after all, in large language models and AI, how they are right now, are just a big interactive library of human knowledge. And even that just from the Western world. There is not much Eastern stuff in it, which is a pity because this would make the whole thing rounder and richer. But I suggest when I have an experiment, I have an experiment with my students at the university, and I found something very interesting. Specialists or those who pretend to be specialists in a certain field, they approach talking or prompting to ChatGPT completely different than those students who come up with a multi-potentialite background. The specialists go more for a very simple input-output prompting, like tell me this, tell me that, is this true, is this not true? And then finally they make a sum up, show me the results in a table, and then they are happy with it, and that's the result. They dive very deep into it. But the multi-potentialite, when he starts the prompting, it is a very meandering, confusing prompt. It is a lot about everything and nothing, and then sharpens it and finds the ways, and they don't show it in a table. Most of the time, these people just show it in fields, in topics. Show me and interrelations. And then there is this text, and they love to see the text and the story. The others love to see the table. I mean, that's potentially an individual preference as well. But I just have to have this feeling that those who feel more polymathic or generalistic want to broad, dive deep, parallel, and funnily enough, they interpret the results a bit differently. Because they start to connect it to qualitative stuff and how it resonates in their lives. With more specialized students who just, this is that's my new puzzle piece for what I need for my machine thinking. 1 + 2 + 3 + 4. Now I have a wonderful new insight, and that's it. And these are two kinds of thinking. And I mean, this makes us strong as a society and mankind to have both visions, both perspectives.
I definitely could think that like the better person would be incorporating both. Don't limit yourself to just one angle. And a lot of that comes down to prompt engineering, and perhaps maybe generalistic people are going to be better at prompt engineering in new ways, whereas the specialists might be just better at kind of just doing the same thing over and over again for more mass use. So like let's say an AI usage is for video graphics for a movie, or VFX, I mean. And so in VFX, you might want to do, let's remove something on someone's arm, a tattoo on the arm, and normally you have to go through every frame and remove it like a photo editing and do that thousands of times, and you have 10 people doing it. But instead of having 10 people, you could have 1 or 2 who are using AI to do it, and they're just doing that same task over and over again, but they're just prompting it to do that faster.
I even think that what we actually completely miss out is the tree of thought prompting, where you can tell the machine that it should pretend to be 3 different experts, and they should discuss something with themselves. There you get a much richer and much better understanding of the interconnecting fields and the problems there.
one thing I wanted to bring up with you too, because it kind of makes me, I'm just curious what your thoughts are. With my knowledge management niche that I do, I wanted to create a AI model that was trained on my data, right? You can use
Mhm.
it like AutoGPT or using a local model on the computer, train it on my Obsidian texts that I have. And so that's why I've written a lot of stuff on myself, but I also have a lot of articles I saved. I even went on Stanford and some of the other colleges' information
Mhm.
sites. They have open books or open philosophy pages. And so it's basically 200 pages long for each of these different Buddhism or Platonic or all these different philosophies out there. And I downloaded those texts because I know I won't be able to read them right now, but over time I could read them. But also, if I were to train an AI on my data, I want this AI to have science understanding and philosophy understanding.
Yes.
And so I downloaded these texts for that purpose too, not only for myself, but for the AI to be trained on. I haven't done it yet, but it's curious.
It's a brilliant idea. Do that.
Any thoughts from that though?
I tried it because I'm a big fan of Michel de Montaigne,
Okay.
the Renaissance philosopher. And I built an Montaigne companion for myself as well. So to talk to compare to Montaigne about my ideas. But at a certain moment, you understand that it's just what he has written, what someone else interpreted. It's not. It's of course not the same. But funnily
Yeah.
enough, new ideas pop up when I read it. The other thing is, I think that bringing together certain pieces of knowledge, as you said, and generate some kind of AI, some bot to work with. I mean, David Pasiak did a wonderful job with OpenAI there. He built a couple of different bots and harnessed them so they can work together iteratively. And this is brilliant. So check that out. That is really
Okay.
good.
Send it
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Or for instance, Razia Aliani, who is now a shooting star on LinkedIn because she's the first one who really gets an idea how to use large language models properly for instance, research, for reviews, for paper writing, and she does a brilliant job. She's polymathic as well.
Oh, to talk to her on the show as well. Feel free to
Yeah,
send all those to me so I don't
she's
forget.
brilliant.
I find that I'm obsessed with the idea of creating my own Jarvis like Iron Man, and I felt like the first step to that is to have a system where the human can input their stuff, their journals, their data, their knowledge, the stuff they want to keep. And that's where I think knowledge management fits into it, but that's the first step. The second step is building a system that also can be read by AI. And so that's kind of where I was angling for it. Last question here. Can you tell us more about the MBA Polymathy and Transdisciplinary Innovation Program?
Yes. Well, it actually was born 1.5 years ago, 2 years, 1.5 years ago, when we suddenly understood, Angela and other polymaths, that we suddenly understood we just have not enough research. We don't have the whole topic not grounded into proper research. We are still some kind of weirdos who think we are. I mean, let's be honest, where is the proof? So, as well, that was the moment where I understood, okay, we have to go in deep with that, even if we don't like it as polymaths, but we have to go in deep with that. And that's when we started developing the MBA. Why MBA and not Master of Science? Because actually, so many people out there who are polymathic and work in companies and or are self-employed, they have so much interesting understandings of how they move with their lives and work-life balance, and earn money as polymaths. That was the point where it was born. And then there were so many things to think about. Because when we talk about polymaths, we also have to include neurodiverse people, ADHD, autism, Asperger's. Actually, everyone who wants to get a better understanding or use this mindset, this polymathic mindset, for their own benefit. Yes, and that's actually where it ended up that we contacted Absolute Business School, Professor Fuller, who was very open for this, and really I'm super grateful that he let me do my thing and give me a goal and out of my way. And he said, okay, I'm out of my way. Do and come back when you're finished, and then let's have a look. And there were so many bits and pieces where I understood to make it as manageable and doable as possible. We can't do it over 3 years. It should be a top up with 9 to 12 months, because that's actually, 9 months is a baby. 12
Yeah.
months is like you can focus for a year on one thing. When it becomes year 2, many will leave. That's no good. Then the other thing was assignments. so many neurodiverse or special polymaths come up and say, yeah, writing the next assignment, it's so boring. Why can't I do, for instance, a poem or a song about it, or do an infographic or draw a comic? I mean, I learned more from Asterix and Obelix than from board books. So a comic is a good thing. And that's where we have a very open form for assignments. And of course, a study GPT, where we fill every module with content. And then you have a certain study GPT that follows along through your studies. We even start with with developing the research question and thesis in the first module. So after module 6, you actually have everything what you need to start writing, and you can use the study GPT to write the thesis. Everyone is around right now. Is it morally? Is it ethically correct? Well, it is when you stick close to your supervisor and talk about what have you done and why. Actually, we'll learn a lot more about that they are allowed to use it than when we forbid it. And here comes the wonderful thing, because our lecturers, all lecturers that we have, are polymathic plus somewhere on the spectrum. Polymathic plus ADHD, polymathic plus autistic. So the cohorts are not bigger than 7 to 9 students. So there is always one lecturer per student around who can assist you and who can bring you through this 9 months that you get your stuff written. And therefore, there's some kind of guarantee that you finally graduate. Because we need this info, we need this research done, we need the basics. Are we real? If so, in how far, where, when, and where are the limitations? Where are we definitely no fit? So yes, this was the idea, and it's the first one in history, and I'm really proud about it because it took 500 years.
Yeah. I definitely think the use of AI is good. A lot of people, again, there's that conversation, that discourse right now, like, oh, don't use AI in schools. But AI is a accelerator. It's not going to, like, yes, people can cheat with it, but that's dependent on the person, not necessarily the AI itself. And I talk about this a lot in content creation. So people are overusing AI to write completely the full blog post, whereas use AI to come up with the outline or the title, I hate, for example, doing descriptions of my blog posts. I don't know why. It's just something, one of those things, like, once I had the blog post written, I don't want to sit there and make that one paragraph explaining it. So I give it to AI to do it for me. It helps me accelerate what I'm doing, using it for angles to it, not the whole thing.
Yeah. That's a big thing, because I understood so far until now that when you want to write the prompt properly, you have to think a lot about what are you asking, and then when you get the answer back, you somehow already know half of it because you used so much time. And I think when you run through a master program and already know so much, then it becomes some kind of a bit boring to use the GPT still for the thesis, because you already know it. But this is, for instance, one research question we can finally publish then. We found out that generalistic, polymathic, neurodiverse students like this tool, and then X, Y, Z where it doesn't fit. So, so it is firing itself up and building itself up every time a cohort brings in some new information and new knowledge.
That's really great. And if people wanted to find out more from you, your channel and stuff like that, where can people find you online for you?
Oh, first of all, LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah, you're building that out.
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a line. I'm definitely answering, because I answer all my messages. Then on 1lpc.gr web.site, which is the one Leonardo per company site. We can contact me over there, or of course, leave me a comment on the channel when you like something, and we will find a way to find to each other.
Yeah, I got all those links down below for you anyways.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Of course. What do you think could be a good call to growth for people to do?
Good question. You mean with regards to become polymath?
Sure.
Okay. I think the first thing and foremost, kick out anxiety and start being curious again. Because is such a fundamental thing when you understand that you don't have to fear something. When you transform your mindset in, let's find out what it is. And I have this a lot with my daughter. She's 7 now, Valentina. And when she is always like shying away of something, I say, what is it now? What actually do you fear? I don't know, it's dark. Well, then let's bring light on it. And when there is light on it, suddenly oh, wow, it isn't nothing to fear. that's interesting. Why did I fear something? Or when we're at the Danube at the riverside, when she sees something swimming in the water, oh my God, what is that? Well, let's pick it out, let's bring it over, let's put it on the shore, let's have a look. And then, it's just an old fish or whatsoever, or a dead fish, I don't know. It is this moment of understanding that there is nothing to fear as long as you are curious. And I think for those who want to come into this polymathic mindset, this is the first thing to do. Confront yourself with something you fear and then ask yourself, what exactly is it? Put some light on it, learn about it, and then suddenly it becomes pretty interesting.
I love that. And that's also why I don't try to give you too much of an answer. Like you asked me, how the call to growth happens. It's almost like a prompt engineering as a host. Like there's something I ask all my guests, what is a polymath to you? Or what is a call to growth? These are questions that are open-ended. Like they'll prompt you and see where your brain goes to and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I love what you just said there. And so once again, this is Dustin PolyInnovator and Odilo Stummer on the Polymath Podcast. Thank you for being here.
I'm so grateful for that. Thanks so much, Dustin. You are doing absolute magnificent work for the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.